Councillors, staff and members of the public, I declare open this meeting of council. Welcome all attendees, and also I wish to acknowledge on behalf of those here the Wadani and Bibbulmun people as traditional custodians of this region and pay our respects to elders past and present. This meeting will be audio recorded for minute-taking purposes and will also be live streamed on the City of Busselton YouTube channel. A prayer will be read out as part of the opening of this meeting by Pastor Joe Atwater from the Dunsborough Church of Christ, and we thank Joe along as at all of our meetings for giving up of his time and giving us his blessing at this meeting. We thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Sure. That's on? Okay.
Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this council. We thank you for Grant and the service he's put into the Busselton community, being just these years of service. Lord, we thank you for his family. We pray for your blessing upon them. We pray for the future mayor and, Lord, the election process. We just pray for, blessing upon this family and on the community. And in a world that is in a lot of turmoil and shaken, we just thank you for what a blessing it is to be in this community here in Busselton. So everything that is decided on tonight, we commit to you. We pray for peace and unity amongst councillors and the community and the decisions that will just bring out whatever is the best decision for families, for your glory and for the benefit of this community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank
you, Joe, and again, thank you for your time and blessing. And we do know that if you do have other business to attend to, you obviously will leave, but you're also welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. Thank you. We have no apologies. We do have an approved leave of absence from Councillor Love, but she has chosen to ignore that to attend this evening, and we're delighted to have her back amongst us, taking a break from her maternal duties. Announcements by the presiding member. Feeling a bit nervous tonight after 272 meetings of council and chairing about 160 odd of those. I feel very nervous this evening, but I am extremely proud to have served my whole adult life since I was 16, my country and hopefully my community, more recently over the last 14 years. And I've had the honour to sit in a leadership position here for a decade, 2 as Deputy Mayor and 8 as the Mayor. I'm incredibly thankful for the support and the advice that I've received from community, from colleagues and also peers during that time. And many of those people are here tonight. Our community has seen extraordinary progress and development in that period, but as always in local government, there is always more to be done. We've grown from a shire of under 30,000 to a city of over 43,000 during my time on council. And balancing the need for growth with retaining the character of our district is always going to be difficult. Among our accomplishments in that time, well documented, major projects like the jetty refurbishment, the building that we sit in today, our wonderful foreshores in Busselton and Dunsborough, playing fields, airport upgrades, road networks, but all of those, there's often the day-to-day unheralded work of local government that supports our community, constructing, maintaining and operating assets and delivering services. None of the achievements we've overseen would have been possible without our fantastic staff who do so much for our community, often without acknowledgement. I've sought to sing their praises where they are richly deserved and publicly defend them from unfair criticism and accusations. And where we can do better, speak quietly at the appropriate time and to the appropriate people. The community have the power now to select the next leader of the council, and I urge them to carefully consider the candidates for this important position based on their experience, character and abilities. they're all in the room this evening. I was in Albany recently, and I think only 3 of the 7 candidates for the mayoral position were actually had experience with local government, so that would be interesting. I would like to publicly thank my family and friends who've supported me in this journey, and without whom I would not have been able to dedicate myself to the council and the community for the last 14 years. I now have a chance to continue travelling with my wonderful wife and be a very interested observer in Busselton's future, although if you see me in the gallery, you kick my butt out the door. Thank you all.
Mr Mayor, I'd request my fellow councillors to stand up and give you an ovation, if they will. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, can I have an opportunity to speak?
Yes, Councillor.
Grant, look, personally, I've had the pleasure of working with you for 8 years, and I know Ross has as well, and councillors here between 4 and 2. And from a councillor's perspective, and I hope that I'm speaking on behalf of everyone, your knowledge and guidance and direction and support, tolerance, I suppose, and dedication to the role has been extremely valued by me, and I hope I speak on behalf of other councillors. And yeah, as you've mentioned, your contribution to the city of Busselton over the last 14 years, it has been huge. And you mentioned some of the areas that you've been involved in, including the foreshore, the airport, salt water. That was part of those projects, part of a 3-pillar project. We've had Dunsborough and Meelup and other foreshore elements completed in that time as well. The Community Resource Centre, Barnard Park Pavilion and Ovals, Dunsborough Ovals, the Tennis Club relocation and pavilions, waste facilities in Dunsborough and Busselton, town centre redevelopments in Dunsborough, and that's just what I know of from my time and the 8 years that I've been on council with you that were in progress while I've been here. So, look, you have done a huge contribution, and also, as was recently acknowledged, your contribution to local government generally through WALGA involvement, and also RCA Australia and RCWA has given a huge contribution and benefit to the local government community generally in Western Australia and Australia to a degree. And yeah, look, I just wish you well in retirement. I know I'll miss that steady hand that I always have found you to be there in terms of supporting me. But yeah, go and chase some sun and enjoy yourself, and have some valuable time with your family, which will be well deserved. But yeah, your contribution has been significant, so thank you.
Thank you all. I do also take this opportunity to wish all of those who are up for election this weekend, which is just about everyone, all the best. And if you are unsuccessful, as does occur in local government, we are at the whim of the community. I wish you all the best in the future, and I hope that we leave here not just as former colleagues, but hopefully also as friends, and we can catch up around the community and recollect on some of the achievements that we have managed and challenges. Okay, I'll move on to the business of the meeting. I have received a disclosure of impartiality in regard to item 10.2 from Councillor Cronin, and he will be disclosing that impartiality interest immediately before this item is discussed. Item 5.1, councillors, is to confirm as a true and correct record the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of September. Is there a move? Councillor Cronin, seconded Councillor Ryan. Is there any opposition? If not, I put the motion. Those in favour? It's carried 9-0. We now have question time for the public, and we have received a booking for this from Peter Kyle. Peter is here, sorry. Welcome along, Peter, and you have two questions that you wish to have recorded and responded where we can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity of asking this question. I'm referring to item 14.1 of the agenda, and in particular recommendation 7C of the on the motion. It concerns the Dunsborough Reference Group, and I have to say that I was slightly surprised when I first read the agenda that there was a recommendation that the Dunsborough Reference Group be disbanded. I read it again and realised that wasn't quite what was intended by those words, and the CEO kindly rang me shortly after I read that and explained the situation to me. Having said that, I would have thought that if one was talking about disbanding or adjusting the way in which a group might operate, it might be an idea to discuss the matter with the relevant group. I merely mention that not by way of any sense of wanting to change things, but because it just seems to me to be common sense. Having said that, I understand that what's proposed there is the idea that elected members should not be appointed to represent the city on that group. And I have seen, of course, the alternate recommendation which has been put forward. I'm not sure who put it forward, but I can say that the reference group agrees with the comments made in the alternative recommendation and the supporting comments. And so if that alternative recommendation was passed, you would have no opposition from the reference group. Just like you to know that. But can I say, we on the reference group have valued enormously the presence and the participation of the elected representatives of the city, as well as the administration representatives as well. It has, as indicated in that report, not entirely gone according to plan the whole time, but I also agree with the comment that it's been useful, and I hope it's been useful to the city and the council. It's certainly been useful, I think, to the people of Dunsborough, and for that we appreciate the opportunity to do that, and I think I can speak on behalf of most people in Dunsborough by saying that it has resulted in some valuable improvements. My question then is really simply, is there any reason why the reference group could not continue to operate without this disbandment of the elected member representative? And I think I've got the answer from the staff comment in relation to the alternative motion. And if that's the answer, then I'm quite happy to leave it at that. Perhaps I could ask the CEO whether that's the case.
Yes, please, Mr.
Yes, through the Mayor. Yes, so through the comments there, and obviously you're aware of the proposed alternate that I believe Councillor Riccelli has put up tonight, which does suggest continuing working in partnership with the Dunsborough Reference Group. So if that's the decision made by Council tonight, happy to obviously continue in that vein.
All right. I would suggest then, if that is carried tonight, that some conversation between the administration and the group for the future conduct of matters would be valuable, and we look forward to that. We have had excellent conversations with all the staff who have attended, and Mr. Needham has been at a number of meetings, Mr. Sands has been at a number of meetings, and they've been valuable meetings as far as we're concerned. The elected representatives and the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Cox have also been valuable contributors to the debate, as has, I might say, Councillor Riccelli, who seems to sort of slip in unannounced occasionally. I think because she enjoys Dunsborough or something like that. But anyway, it's operated very well, not 100% successfully, but nevertheless very valuably, I think. So thank you for that, Mr Mayor, and I'm sorry, it was a question, but
Eventually.
you've allowed me a lot of leeway in the past, and I dare say that's going to continue for the next 5 minutes. At least I hope so. Can I refer then my second question to item 15.1, which is the CEO's report to the council, and in particular, attachments 5 and 7 in that item. It won't surprise you to know that that concerns the question of the attitude of the WA Planning Commission, or at least its chairman, to the city and to the business of providing information to the city and the communities with which it is dealing and which it is affecting by the decisions it makes. And I have to say, it is an appalling response from the chairman of the Planning Commission, not because it may not be technically and legally correct, but because it demonstrates an unwillingness to share information with local government that I think is appalling. And my question to the CEO, or perhaps to you, Mr Mayor, seeing as you won't have to answer for it afterwards, is what is the city going to do about that response? Because it cannot do nothing.
I think before I refer it perhaps to Mr Needham to respond, that the city has already undertaken some actions, but is also working to some other actions in response to our disappointment as well in the response and how we had to seek that information.
Thank
Mr
you, sir.
Needham, did you wish to? Or Mr.
Yeah, I might just jump in just quickly if I could. Thanks, Mr Mayor. Is that I agree with the concerns that you have, Mr Kyle, and I think that the discussions that I've had also with Mr Needham is that we will be seeking a further response from the chair, is that we didn't feel that the response really was adequate for the questions that we asked. It didn't feel that we actually had the information that we were really seeking either, so we're seeking a further response from the chair. Also seeking a meeting with the minister as well and engaging some assistance.
Sorry, with who?
Sorry, a meeting with the minister,
Yes.
with Minister Carey, and seeking assistance from our local member and others to help us get that meeting with the minister as well. We'd also be looking at being very clear on what our position is on some of the proposals in the Lewin Naturalist Sub-Regional Strategy as well. And then recommendations and the approach from officers in regards to strategic planning matters are expected to continue, but I think really we really need to tackle those first two items of an appropriate response from the Commission, and also getting that meeting with the Minister outlining some of our concerns. Yeah, I'm not sure if Mr Needham might want to add to that, but that was the discussions that we've had since those responses have come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think holistically the front page of the West Australian today was probably the strongest message we've had from the state government in.
That's enough to give anyone interested in local government nightmares, quite frankly. And it's appalling. And perhaps I could draw your attention, for those of you who ever read the wonderful pages of Post newspaper in Perth, in the western suburbs of Perth, a letter from somebody headed 6 years of inaction begs a royal commission. Well, he's got hope. He's got no hope whatsoever of getting that. But the point is, it's not limited to Busselton. It's a national, it's a statewide disgrace if you are interested in the validity and usefulness of local government, because it is simply saying you're not relevant to planning. That's the way I read it, and we've got to change that. Because in the case of the particular matter which I was concerned, which was item 7, where the chairman of the Planning Commission says, the WAPC considered the implementation of the strategy at its meeting the 28th of April 2021 and adopted a set of recommendations. At that meeting, it was determined that the PIA investigation process would not include a period of public advertising. What the hell? Why on earth would they want to do that? And that's an area of land being proposed to expand the town of Dunsborough by 1,500 lots, several hundred hectares, and yet not worthy of comment by the community. Thank you for the answer,
Thank you.
Mr. Nottle. I appreciate that you're going to do something, and we would certainly appreciate the opportunity of commenting on whatever you might propose to be saying. I'm glad Mr. Sands is going back to the planning department in Perth. He might be able to influence things, mightn't he?
We can only hope, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your
I just wanted to make one further comment on behalf of, I think, the vast majority of the people of Dunsborough. We very much appreciate the enormous amount of work you have done for the city of Busselton over many years. We admire your dedication to the job. We know it's a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day job these days. And I know from, and I'm sure the councillors here all know, how much you put into it. I served as a deputy mayor to 4 mayors in Perth over my time in local government, and I never saw one of them put the amount of time and effort that you have put into this job over the last few years. We admire you for it, and thank you for it. We recognise that we will all have differences of opinion, and sometimes you've annoyed the hell out of us. But we know that you've done it honestly and for your own good reasons, and we move on because we have confidence that overall you have been and will be a fantastic leader of this community. And I want to thank you, and while I'm in the process of doing that, to thank the other councillors who may or may not be continuing after Saturday, who knows, because, again, I appreciate how much work goes into it, an enormous amount. And Councillor Love, it's lovely to see you back. I hope you've been reading all the agendas while you've been sitting at home.
In between feedings. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor.
Value your contributions. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to ask a question of council? Come on, Keith, it wouldn't be a meeting if you didn't come and ask.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, CEO, councillors and everybody else. Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to acknowledge what you said about the work that's been done on the foreshore and the projects that have happened here in your time. I'd noticed that one was missing, and that's the one I wouldn't agree with, but all the others, it's been a fantastic job done, and I think everybody in the city of Busselton is proud of what we've got, so thank you. And on a personal thing, I'd like to say also for question time, thank you for the flexibility that you've grown to give me when I sit here. I think it's easier now than what it was initially. It's not as rigid as what it used to be either, so thank you again for that. So I have 2 questions. The first one, it's about item 10.4, advertising signs to do, and that's the agenda attachment, policy statement 5.1. Portable advertising signs are not to be mounted to a vehicle or trailer. The second part of that is the local parking law 2020 says no parking of vehicles exposed for sale and in other circumstances if a trailer is unattached to a motor vehicle. Note, Caves Road, the bypass and parts of Busselton Highway are main roads controlled, and I know they have the same view. It's therefore quite clear that candidate election signs on trailers have been parked illegally around the city. Question 1A, is it the candidate's responsibility to investigate whether using an unhitched trailer sign is allowable?
Mr. CEO.
Yeah, so in that particular circumstance, I suppose it depends on location and jurisdiction as well. So, and as you mentioned, a couple of those locations being main roads, it does come down to main roads as well. And additionally, I think what's probably been clear through this last election process is there needs to be a bit of a review of all of those signage around elections in general. So that whether that's state, federal, local government election, you probably see a bit of a difference between the current processes here, current activity here versus nearby. That may need to be reviewed with asking council to review that into the future. In relation to specific trailers, it does depend on that jurisdiction. Those circumstances don't really seem to fall in where we're at, as long as it's not impeding public safety. And if we have jurisdiction over that, we can address those matters. Your question around whether the candidate should be addressing that, or at least considering is that possible, is yes, they should. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those laws,
In regard to unattached trailers, my understanding from a previous incident pertaining to a caravan where I sought some information, I thought there was a time period, time limitation on the amount of time that could remain in that location. But I'll...
but it doesn't say that in the actual laws and policy statement.
Policies aren't laws.
Sorry?
Policies are not laws. Our property local law determines the law.
Okay.
These are merely policies.
Well, the parking law says it shouldn't be left there if it's unattached to a motor vehicle. But anyway, I'll let that...
On city property. That'd be on city property though, Mr Sims. So if it's not on city property, that's not something we have jurisdiction over.
Even on council roads?
The references that you were referring to were the main roads areas, so we don't have jurisdiction over main roads areas. And, so they were main roads areas from my understanding.
Yeah, that as well, main roads areas. But the law, seems we can't talk about the policy statement, clearly says you can't do it if a trailer is unattached to a motor vehicle. So the second part of my question is really sort of answered it, but why wouldn't the ranger also be aware of that issue?
Same thing, jurisdiction, and whether there's actually a legal ability to be able to commandeer or deal with a particular... If you look at the signs compared to other jurisdictions, signage, local laws or property local laws that have that within their local laws that have a power to be able to seize and remove, etc., it comes down to that. So I think that's probably something that council may want to consider reviewing into the future.
I would go past 12 unhitched trailers and caravans on city streets on my way home, and I live pretty close to here. So it's a matter of some discretion, surely.
With regard to Mr Noddle's comments, I don't think anybody, including the city, would object to the normal signs on a stick, signs on a fence type thing, because everyone knows that there's an election and that happens and they go and that's it. Mayor Henley, in today's paper you acknowledge that due to the saltwater, you've seen the strain grow on our roads and recreation facilities, plus that there will be one of the main challenges for the incoming council trying to strike a balance between amenities and the chequebook. So I would gather that means that the saltwater is consuming so much money, there's not much money or borrowing power for other projects. Is that...
You probably need to be careful what you assume. My comments were around generally referring to our recreation facilities strategy, which we have been reviewing, where we went out to the community and consulted on community aspirations, needs and wants with regard to recreational facilities, and had a $40 million forward-looking budget for the next 10 years. And on examination of that with cost escalations, that price has probably almost doubled. And it should also be noted that it didn't include some of those big ticket items that have formed part of a wish list of some sections of the community for some time.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. So what I've said, it followed on after you commenting about the salt water. And so are you saying that the cost has doubled? Is that what you were referring to?
No?
Just now, I mean.
I said the recreation facilities strategy
Okay.
envisaged in our long-term financial plan. The review of that has shown the costs have almost doubled,
Yeah.
projected going
Okay.
forward to deliver those recreation
Yeah.
facilities.
But what I read out, what you said in today's paper, was literally after the salt water. So if I've made an assumption, I'm sure lots of other people have as well, because it followed on. Because as we know, we only have 13 million for a $45.5 million project in grants. Anyway, thank you and good luck with your holiday touring grant.
Thanks, Keith. I'll
Thank
miss
you.
our little chats. Are there any other members of the public who would like to ask a question of council? Otherwise, we'll move on to item 7.1. Councillors, we have received a petition which has 30 signatures. We had a presentation by the organiser of the petition recently, and I would like a mover for the officer recommendation that the council receive and refer the CEO for a report. Moved Councillor Ryan, second Councillor Love. Is there any opposition? If not, I put the motion. Those in favour? Is carried 9-0. We now have presentations by parties with an interest. Received a booking from Warwick Kint in regard to item 11.2. Warwick, if you would like to come forward.
So thank you, Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity to address council again. My name is Warwick Kint from APH Contractors, and I'm addressing you on behalf of Staunton Developments Proprietary Limited, the director of which is travelling overseas and can't attend the meeting. As you're aware, we addressed the information session last week concerning this application. I don't propose to repeat all of the points we made last week. I would like to further address the proposed alternate resolution which has been circulating for consideration. But firstly, I wanted to confirm that we already have all approvals needed to proceed. The purpose for this amendment was to have more efficient and less impactful extraction. Specifically, we are seeking an increase in the truck movements per day to reduce the number of operating days. We are not seeking one single additional truck movement overall. An approval would result in two scenarios. If demand remains strong for sand, this will allow a much quicker end to the whole extraction, possibly as short as 18 months, plus the rehabilitation. If demand does not hold up to allow consistent extraction, then it's possible that the extraction could run for the life of the DA, now 3.5 years. However, the number of active extraction days would be cut by 2/3. That is, instead of having 836 days for extraction, it would drop to 286 days in total. If the amendment is not achieved and any subsequent SAT appeal rejected, then extraction activities and truck haulage will be required to be undertaken on every single day for the next 3.5 years. We would also require operating hours on Saturday for the rehabilitation work. We firmly believe that the amended DA will significantly improve the amenity impact for our neighbours when compared to the existing DA, including our arrangement not to undertake any works on Saturdays. With respect to the reason explained in the alternate resolution, we make the following comments. Firstly, whilst we hope to complete the extraction in a shorter time than the remaining 3.5 years, we can't predict resource demand. The reason says, if this is not achieved, then there may be opportunity for the applicant to submit an approval for an extension. With respect, this would not be viable. The process starts with clearing activity. Once the clearing activity is undertaken, along with this comes significant rehabilitation commitments at a very significant cost. It would not be commercially viable to proceed with incurring these costs if there's not certainty of the viability of extraction. That is why, if proposed amendments as recommended by the officers were not approved, we would have no choice but to appeal this to SAT. Secondly, the water truck, we have no objection to the amendment to require a water truck to be on site to suppress dust. This is already part of the site management and dust management plan. And thirdly, Saturday operation. From the outset of this amended application, we have stated we will no longer need to operate Saturdays following the feedback we received from our neighbours. This is, of course, contingent on the increased truck movements, which gives us more flexibility in our Monday to Friday operations. Thank you for your time. If approved, we look forward to completing the extraction with minimal impact as possible on both the environment and our neighbours.
Thank you, Warwick. There may be questions from councillors. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure who to address this to, perhaps either Mr Darby or Mr Needham. Do you have any idea currently what the demand for sand is like? Is there a strong demand for sand, and do you perceive that if there is strong demand, that will be ongoing for some years?
Yes. And
approximately into the foreseeable future, right? Because there are lots and lots of developments happening that need fill. So your idea is that there would be a strong demand for sand, that it's not going to drop off next year or anytime soon.
one would expect that strong demand for sand will continue for decades into the future, unless and until we find ways of doing development in this part of the world without using sand.
Councillor Riccelli.
Sorry, just a supplementary question for Mr Needham. Look, it's fairly obvious there is a really strong demand for sand, but I would also imagine it's quite competitive out there, and you'd still have to win the contracts to actually... that it's a fairly competitive field out there, am I correct? Or
look, I'm not that close to that side of things, but no, that's not my understanding. My understanding is that demand significantly exceeds supply, and that prices have gone up substantially over the last couple of years, and that that is one of the reasons why we understand that you're starting to see more integration and operators, owners, developers seeking to, I guess, make sure they've got sand, and I guess the smaller customers, the smaller operators, finding it harder to do so.
sorry, supplementary. I'm not quite sure if I actually worded that correctly. I guess what I was trying to ascertain was that with the many extraction industries around, they would still have to actually, obviously they'd put a tender in, they'd still have to actually win that contract. So what I was trying to ascertain was if that's a competitive market, or if what Councillor Cox is saying is correct, and that there's so much demand for it that that doesn't factor into it.
Yeah, Mr Darby or possibly even Mr Kint may be in a better place to answer that than I am, but I'm not sure that anyone will be able to provide a particularly definitive answer.
I think you only have to drive to Perth and see the work on the bore that's self-evident, but also our developments and the requirements of coastal planning policy, which currently ensure there will be a huge demand.
Perhaps I can direct the question to, sorry, Warwick, I can't remember your last name. I guess what we're trying to ascertain is what the likelihood is that you're going to finish this sooner rather than later, because obviously that is very dependent on supply and demand.
So there is genuine strong demand, but it is a job-by-job prospect, and we price jobs and we win some and we don't win some. Not all the jobs we price require large quantities of sand, so our expectation is that the usage will be relatively high, but there's no guarantee that it will be all gone or be able to be used up in the 2 years.
Warwick, I understand from talking to the owner of the property that he either resides or wishes to reside at the property in the near future. And is that correct?
So he has been living there, absolutely. He's away on business at the moment. I'm not sure what his future plans are, but my understanding is that he's been living down on the property.
So I'm sure that he would benefit from having it done as expeditiously as possible.
Indeed.
Any further questions, councillors? Thanks, Warwick.
Thank you.
We don't have any bookings for other parties with an interest. Do we have any? Move on to the adoption by exception resolution. That resolution recommendation is that the committee recommendations for items 10.1, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, 10.6, 10.9 and 10.10 and the officer recommendations for items 11.1, 11.3, 11.4, 12.1, 13.1, 14.2 and 15.1 be adopted on block. Is there a mover for that resolution? Move Councillor Richards. Do apologise. It is on my running sheet. It's not on there. That is the... Okay, that's the officer recommendation? Correct. 11.6. Is there a mover for that adoption by exception resolution, including the officer recommendation for item 11.6, which is in the supplementary agenda? Sorry, moved Councillor Richards, seconded Councillor Carter. Is there any opposition? Not, I put the motion. Those in favour? It's carried 9-0. Councillor Cronin, did you wish to disclose your impartiality?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With regards to item 10.2, the Bushfire Brigade's local law, I declare an impartial interest on this item, as I'm a member of the Metro Bushfire Brigade. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider the item solely on its merit and vote or act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a mover for the committee recommendation for item 10.2? Moved Councillor Payne, seconded Councillor Love. Is there any opposition? Not, I put the motion. Those in favour? Is carried 9-0. Absolute majority achieved. Is there a mover for the committee recommendation, Finance Committee recommendation for item 10.8, Budget Amendment Reserve Closures? Moved Councillor Ryan, seconded Councillor Riccelli. Is there any opposition? Not, I put the motion. Those in favour? Is carried 9-0, absolute majority achieved. Item 11.5, Mover for the officer recommendation. Move councillor Cox, seconded councillor Cronin. Is there any opposition? If not, I put the motion. Those in favour? It's carried 9-0, absolute majority achieved. Councillors, we will now consider item 10.7. There is a committee recommendation. Is there a mover for the committee recommendation? And it shall lapse. There is an alternative recommendation put by myself, and I move that motion as written with, I should do the right thing and stand up. I need to stretch my legs anyway. Which has a correction in item 2, where it says replace the current condition 2 with the following new condition: 2, applications in special character areas, and removing the words requiring the exercise of discretion. That was carried over from the current condition. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded councillor Cronin. Is there any opposition? Not, I put the motion. Those in favour? Carried 9-0. You're all being very kind to me. Item 11.2 received an alternative recommendation from councillor Cox. Councillor Cox, would you like to move your alternative?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move my alternative recommendation as written, including a change from an operating period of 2 years instead of 5, taking out the requirement to work on a Saturday, and also adding in a requirement to have a water cartage truck on site to suppress dust along Hague Road.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the alternative recommendation? If there, we do. You can make it to the opposite recommendation. If there is no seconder, then it lapses. We revert to the officer recommendation. Is there a mover for the officer recommendation? Moved councillor Cronin, seconded councillor Ryan. Is there any opposition? There is opposition. Councillor Cronin, would you like to speak to your...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In essence, I've looked at this motion. I have talked with the locals. I've visited the site. I feel that that it should remain with the time limit it has. I've spoken again with also the people, contractors who will be extracting it, and they have been more than fair, I believe. Now, I understand the movements will be a particular issue that hasn't been raised already, and I think the limitations of us to just change a number from 35 to 25, etc., really in the light of it doesn't make a great deal of difference. Living in these areas, would rather see a shorter time period that extraction is occurred. I believe when they are busy, it will occur quickly, rather than being dragged out. And when they are not busy and they don't have contracts, it will be quiet. The proponents talked about not working on Saturdays, and as we've heard, to keep those consistencies with the policies. I believe that's a good thing. I've also talked about the speed in which the trucks go down the road, and have been given some confidence that they will remain at 40 kilometres an hour to minimise the dust. There will also be a watering truck to minimise the dust. And also, sometimes you don't want them to water because, trust me, if you live on a dust road, you don't want to be going up there when they've wet it down. So maybe we can talk about those conditions with regards to how the wind could be a factor in when wetting down the roads is done. There are many mines around. There's been many mines there for a long time. Luckily, sand mining is a lot quieter than gravel extraction. And when we move into these areas, we do sign up to the fact that we are fully aware that we will be surrounded by gravel pits and sand extractions. So at this point, I do tend to agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this application was approved on the 23rd of April last year and was resolved by myself, Councillors Henley, Carter, Cronin and Cox. It was then approved for 5 years, so we don't need to be backtracking and go to a SAT appeal on this one. The purpose of this application is to have a more efficient and less impactful extraction, which could potentially see the useful life of the pit reduced significantly, dependent on the demand. And we've heard about the demand tonight. Look around you, you know, we've got 3.4, I think, HD height limits for building new houses, so we need the sand. The proponent is only seeking an increase to the truck movements per day to reduce the number of operating days, not seeking additional truck movements overall. I'm mindful that we have a number of complainants in relation to these applications. However, I would hope that the proponent's representative, who has just addressed us, will ensure that the conditions are adhered to, or the city compliance officers will enact the powers we have at our disposal. This approval can only be dealt with on its merits, not based on other cases which we are currently dealing with. Councillors, I urge you to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Riccielli?
Thank you. I'd like to foreshadow an alternative motion should this not be successful, and that will seek to amend the dust management plan to ensure the dust management is more effective and also just to remove the operating hours on the Saturday. Thank you.
You moving your...
I think I'm foreshadowing.
Yeah, she's foreshadowing an alternative. I guess the question is whether that is an amendment or an alternative.
It's because I'm actually
Changing
the dust management
and changing the operating hours on the Saturday. It's probably more an alternative than an amendment. It's probably borderline, but yeah, which means that it needs to be foreshadowed, and then this, if this is lost, that can be re-put.
Okay.
And a point of order, it's not a motion, it's an alternate recommendation.
To a motion. A speaker for? Councillors, I'll speak for this alternative recommendation. Sorry. Oh, sorry, we're back to the officer's recommendation. 272, you think I'd know by then. Back to the officer's recommendation. I'll speak for this for the reasons that Councillor Ryan has pointed out. We did approve this for a 5-year period. The due diligence has been completed over a lengthy period, 18 months, to get to a stage where they're about to commence that construction. They obviously want to get the sand out of there as reasonably quickly as is possible, which will therefore shorten the timeline. However, as I said, it is a competitive environment. Depending on where your pit is and where your customer is, depends on the viability of each contract on a case-by-case basis. To give the flexibility to have that there. Obviously, if there aren't contracts, there won't be trucks operating, but the total number of movements we would expect would not exceed that, although the period may exceed the 2 years potentially. It shouldn't exceed the 3.5 years remaining on this agreed and already decided development approval. For that reason, I would support the officer's recommendation. Thank you. Speaker against? Councillor Richards?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with the time frame, with the 5 years. My only consideration would be, as Councillor Riccielli has said, is the dust management plan and the thresholds for when the active dust suppression is put in place. And I'm satisfied that APH has done their due diligence and consulted with the locals about this, and I'm appreciative of that because it makes it a lot easier going forward for us. So it's only the dust management plan.
Mr Mayor, can I have a question, please, of Mr
Yes.
Needham? In that dust management plan, Mr Needham, does it talk about the requirement of having the water truck there on a regular basis or on site, or?
I'm not across the details of the dust management plan, I'm afraid, councillor.
Okay.
No, not specifically.
We were up to a speaker for. Speaker against? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As you and Councillor Ryan rightly pointed out, this was approved in 2022. I was one of the councillors that approved this application. However, what I approved was 12 truck movements in and 12 truck movements out per day. The application has now changed to 35 truck movements in and 35 truck movements out, which is more than double. And in my opinion, it is quite excessive, hence why I put up my alternative to reduce the time frame. Extractive industries, councillors, as we all know, whether it's sand, gravel or anything else, are controversial in this area. The reason being that we live in a rural area, and these are approved in rural areas, but the rural area that we live in the city of Busselton, and it also exists in Margaret River and other small shires, Capel, that we are surrounded by, is the fact that we are approving small lifestyle blocks, tourism accommodation businesses, extractive industries, intensive agriculture, and they're not compatible. So we have to live with the fact that we're approving, whether it's the chicken or the egg, whether the extractive industry came first or the tourism accommodation came first. People move to this area and they buy lifestyle blocks in rural areas because of the lifestyle and the amenity. I acknowledge that we do have a need for raw materials. That's not in question here. I think we've heard tonight that this sand, there's a massive demand for sand. That's not going away anytime soon. It can be extracted very, very quickly. I have no doubt of that. When I read the submissions, I'm not sure what the other councillors read, I read the submissions from the surrounding landowners saying that it would affect their amenity. There are a number of agencies actually that also said that the increased truck movements would affect the road. It would affect conservation values on some of the nearby blocks, the dust, the noise and the road. So I'm not sure what everyone else read, but I read submissions that indicated that the amenity of the surrounding landowners would be affected, hence why I am speaking against the officer recommendation. At the very least, I will be supporting an alternative, the foreshadowed alternative by Councillor Riccielli, because there is nothing mentioned about dust suppression on Hague Road. There is a dust suppression plan which talks about the site, but there is nothing. I've lived on a rural property for 25 years on a narrow gravel road with trucks going up and down, and I can tell you right now that everyone's amenity is affected when you've got 35 trucks going in and out per day, the dust on the road, the dust on your car. If you've got a house that's located close to the road, the dust on everything. And if it's not regularly suppressed, yes, water trucks are still they're problematic as well because they wet down the road and then you get mud all over everything. Extractive industries are problematic. And frankly, I'd prefer JDAP to be approving this. I don't want to approve extractive industries because I know what's going to happen. All the landowners are going to come back to us probably in the next 12 months and start making complaints about the impacts to amenity that these increased truck movements, and let's be clear, that's what we are approving, the increased truck movements, not whether or not they can do it. It will be an issue. I may not have to be here to deal with it, so happy days. But I am speaking against this and I would urge you all to vote against the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Is there a speaker for? Speaker against? Councillor Carter.
Councillors, I'm speaking against on the basis that I will be supporting, if this motion fails, Councillor Riccielli's alternative. Not because I think those conditions need to be in there, because I'm satisfied with the agreement that APH have indicated that they will have with the owner of the development in terms of the way that they will operate the pit. So I'm comfortable that it will be covered if this current motion is, the officer recommendation is approved. However, I think this is a way that we can get some conditions within this development approval to align with the operating parameters that the proponent has indicated that they will have with the operator. And so that's why I would be supporting Councillor Riccielli's alternative. Thank you.
Speaker for? Speaker against? Right of reply, Councillor Cronin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, some incredibly valid points are put here. Again, concerns that should we not pass this, that it will go to SAT, and I don't hold much light that we would win. We have already passed this, and yes, I'm not happy about it, and I live on a remote road and dust roads, and I just pray that that things will be done. Whether we can add some dust suppress or management on the road, and again, the problem is once people get onto a main road or public road, then that is exactly it. It is a public road. This whole DA is about a piece of land and what they can do on that piece of land. So it is not a perfect solution. I understand that, and I feel for those locals, but also I hope that we can work, as we can say, with the proponent, and we can make sure that they are adhering to the conditions that are set aside by us. So on that front, I will say I will hope you support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cronin. With that, I will close debate and put the motion. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Opposed? It's lost 2-7. Councillor Riccielli, would you like to move your foreshadowed alternative?
Thank you. I'd like to move an alternative recommendation. I'd like to add a point to item 3, which is around prior to commencement of any development conditions, and I'll read the point that I would like to add into that, and that is an amended dust management plan that identifies thresholds for when active dust suppression must occur on the haulage route and provision of a water truck on site to wet down Hague Road as required to avoid exceeding the identified thresholds. I would also like to amend item 4.2, similar to the same as Councillor Cox had suggested, and that is to take out point B, which prevents the 7 to 1 p.m. Saturdays rehabilitation work. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Carter. Is there any opposition? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Carried 9-0. Now move on to item 14.1. Alternative recommendation. Councillor Riccielli, would you like to move your... alternative?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to move my alternative as written, but with a late inclusion for point 9, which reads, endorses the appointment of an elected member representative as an ex officio board member to the Busselton Jetty Inc. board upon invitation from Busselton Jetty Inc. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Cox. Is there any opposition? There is. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councillor Riccielli?
was hoping I'd get away with that. It was agreed some time ago that Council, in line with its adopted community engagement framework, supports engagement with a Dunsborough reference group on strategic planning and other issues or proposals of strategic importance to the long-term future of the Dunsborough community. The DRG is now a well-established reference group within Dunsborough, and it has a range of stakeholders within the group that bring a range of experience and skills to the table. The reference group has proved to be a valuable resource for the purposes of city and council engagement on matters affecting Dunsborough, and it is really important that this continues in a productive manner. The key aims for this group from a city perspective were as follows: provision of greater opportunity for stakeholders to contribute to considered decision-making with respect to the future development of Dunsborough, assisting in identifying current and future community needs and assessing options to meet those needs, and assisting in building partnerships and two-way communication between the city and the community. Now, in the officer's report, it clearly identifies that the above key aims have been achieved. The only criticism appears to be that the DRG's terms of reference needs a little tweaking, primarily around the issue of membership, forming an executive, and the role of councillors on this group. Surely these are minor concerns and can easily be rectified to the satisfaction of both parties. The officer's report suggests that city officers should continue to meet with the group. However, there should no longer be any formal representation by councillors, that councillors could, however, choose to attend if they wish. Having experienced just how busy this role of councillor is, and how many other committees and working groups, etc., that you sit on, I don't believe that many, if any, councillors will voluntarily attend groups of this nature on a regular basis. So to ensure that we continue to achieve the key aims specified originally, I believe that it is vital that not only city officers attend the reference group on a regular basis, but that it includes formal councillor representation. I further recommend that both parties discuss and refine the terms of reference that the DRG has written and ensure that it functions in a manner consistent with the original resolution moving forward. Thank you.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just keep it very brief. I obviously concur with everything that Councillor Riccielli said, and I would just like to add that having been a member of the reference group, I can attest to the valuable contribution that they make to the community, and I think the value in having a councillor considering in that group, considering one of our aims on council and something that we aspire to continue in the future is engagement with the community. And I think that this is a perfect example of a group that contains a number of community groups within it, who can all go back to their own community groups and feed information back. And as a councillor, you can sit there and you can listen to what the community wants. So I think that there is a lot of value. However, we just need to work on the terms of reference to ensure that everybody is on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the alternative recommendation? Councillor Love.
I 100% agree with what Councillor Riccielli is intending to achieve with her alternative motion. However, I do not agree with point 6, A, D and F of reducing those reference working groups and panels from an elected member representation of 3 down to 2. This being, the reasons for this being that the Economic Development Advisory Group and the Business Development Events and Marketing Reference Groups work and recommendations play a large role in the city's economic and business development. And whilst I do understand that these working groups' recommendations come to council for us to endorse, the amount of pre-work that it goes into those reference groups to come to those decisions that come to council, I honestly believe that we need more than 2 elected members to represent the community's interests so that we get a varied number of opinions to help guide what those recommendations are going to be that come to council. Those are for the Economic Development and Advisory Group and the Business Development, Events and Marketing Reference Group. They do such astronomical work in our economic development and in what we fund in the events around town that I don't believe that it should be left to just two councillors. Yes, it does come to council for us to decide.
Councillor Love, are you foreshadowing a amendment?
And so that is why I am foreshadowing an amendment to councillor Riccielli's
So you wish to move an
alternative.
amendment to the alternative?
I would like to move an amendment of councillor Riccielli's alternative motion as noted on screen. And I strongly urge you all to reject councillor Riccielli's motion. Oh, don't have. I strongly urge you to support my amendment.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Seconded councillor Payne. Is there any opposition? There's not. I put the motion. Those in favour? The amendment is carried 9-0. The substantive motion is now in play with those changes to the numbering. We now have a speaker for. Is there a speaker for the alternative? Speaker against? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. With regards to Councillor Riccielli's modification to the DRG part, it's difficult because substantially I agree with what Councillor Riccielli is saying in that Dunsborough Reference Group has been useful and should continue. But it's important to understand that it is an autonomous and independent and external body, and it will continue to be so, if not more so, after the strange relationship that has arisen as a result of the way that the DRG came to exist in the first place, which was a interesting process. But in essence, it is up to the reference group to formalise or not formalise as they see fit their own existence, and for council to participate in it as invited to and should they wish to, because neither one can force the other one to do anything because they are distinct and independent entities. No, wait. Thanks.
Sorry, 10 here substantively should be as an elected member. Sorry, councillors. A speaker for? Speaker against? Councillors, I'm going to speak against this, and I wish to move an alternative, which I will get to very quickly. My alternative is to remove substantive 8C, or to reinstate 8C to the recommendation. That is to remove the elected member representation on the Dunsborough Reference Group. And I will move that amendment.
Point of order. Yeah. Sorry, Mr Mayor, you can't move a new motion while this motion's in play. You can foreshadow it.
Amendment.
Oh, an amendment. I thought you said alternative. Thank you.
Amendment. An amendment to reinstate 7C, 8C, the substantive. So essentially to retain the recommendation to remove the elected member representation from the Dunsborough Reference Group. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Thank you, Councillor Richards. I will speak to this very quickly. We have a number of resident groups and associations and community groups who we take advice from, who we meet with regularly, who we consult with, and who we use as conduits to the community. The Yallingup Residents Association, for those residents around Yallingup, there are no councillors on that group. We also have the Residents of Eagle Bay Association, who deal with some of those complex and contentious issues out towards the Capes and are a good conduit back to their community, whether they are resident or otherwise. There are no councillors on that group. We have formed the Dunsborough Reference Group as a collaboration of various entities within Dunsborough. The Dunsborough Progress Association, Dunsborough Yallingup Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and other groups, including Quindelup residents of the Special Character Area, under one umbrella to come together. And we also sought to get representatives of sporting and other community groups together in an umbrella organisation that we could use as a single sounding board to issues that affect the community of Dunsborough and the Western District of the City of Busselton. I call it the Western District deliberately because we do not have wards. And I think it is inherent on councillors to be seen to represent the whole of the district. And if you have people who are resident or property owners in a particular area who belong to that resident group, then there is certainly a perception, I believe, amongst the community that they are giving favour potentially to that sector of the community. There are none of the terms of reference or objectives of the Dunsborough Reference Group that are unachievable by not having elected members as part of their body. And there is no preclusion on councillors attending, generally by information, any community group, to hear what they have to say. But we are diluting the independence of the Dunsborough Reference Group and also the independence, importantly, and the perception of impartiality of councillors if they are attending a meeting where decisions are made in a recommendation that are then passed on to council, and those councillors then have to consider with the clearness of mind and the impartiality required of this office. So therefore, I'll be moving that we reinstate the removal of elected members from the Dunsborough Reference Group, but that we retain the other elements of Councillor Riccielli's alternative and the substantive elements that are now included from Councillor Love. Thank you. Seconder was Councillor Richards. Did you wish to speak or exercise?
I will speak briefly, just to say that, to my mind, reinstating C is just a simplification of Councillor Riccielli's alternative, and it includes Councillor Love's amendments as well. And just reiterating the importance of these community groups who generally get together of their own accord so that they make sure that they have a voice. It makes our job a whole lot easier when we have a resident group that we can go to consult with, because it is the remit of us. It is our job to consult with the community because it is them that we represent. So, and I just take this opportunity to thank every single one of those residents groups and their members because they are dedicated and passionate about the region. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the amendment? No? Then I put the amendment. Those in favour? This is the amendment. Opposed? It is carried 7-2 and therefore becomes a substantive. And we were up to, well, totally lost it. Wrong page. I did speak against it. Is there a speaker for the substantive, Councillor Cronin? for the alternative recommendation.
Thank you. Yes, just to concur with exactly what the Mayor said, we don't have any wards. And I think as councillors it is fair that we attend other groups. This Sunday I attended the Western Beach Residents Association AGM and spent 2 hours with them understanding their issues with regards to the RAC and other concerns they had. It's our impulse. We can turn up to any of these meetings or request or ask to attend. We don't need to be sat there with a badge on. And I do, being a non-Dunsborough, Busselton, VAS resident, feel that it's unfair that one group is given some precedent over the other. So on that front, I think we should do our jobs. We should be going out there as councillors, talking to the community, listening to the community, and not necessarily having to set up thousands of different groups to do so, but being present with them. Thank you.
Sorry, just clarifying the substantive motion. Can you go to point 9? It should be the amendment, part of the amended motion. Because that is part of Councillor Riccielli's alternative, which still remains in the substantive. The amendment only removed what is substantive now 8C. CO to work in partnership. Yep. Oh, lucky I'm over this. Does anyone else want to speak? That was a speaker 4. Is there a speaker against? Speaker 4. Right to reply, Councillor Richard.
I'll be fairly brief. While I understand this is an independent and autonomous body, this particular reference group was set up because of the huge amount of planning issues, developments proposed, PIAs. I don't think this can be compared to, and I'm not downgrading what issues they have in Yallingup and Eagle Bay, but this was set up for a very specific reason. The officers themselves have outlined, and I'm covering everything that you covered, so I am responding. The officers themselves have certainly sung its praises and openly admitted how effective and valuable this group has been. I do take on board the point that there is possible conflicts of interest if those living in Dunsborough perhaps are actually on that reference group, and I think that's probably something we need to consider moving forwards. But I just feel that the value would be undermined if we were to stop formal councillor representation on the group. So I urge you to support my motion, alternative recommendation, motion, whatever.
Which substantively now precludes elected member participation. With that, I close debate and put the...
By point of clarification, it formally precludes them, but they still informally, through the review, can be included.
That is...
At the Dunsborough reference groups.
It's an outside organisation that someone can attend as a member of the public, yeah.
Put the motion, those in favour of the substantive alternative recommendation. Opposed? Carried 8-1. Thanks, Kate. Eight one. Had to vote for it. It was her motion. Councillors, we have at item 17 been presented with one further item of urgent business. In order to vote on this item, I'll seek a decision to accept the reports as an item of urgent business under the standing orders, as it practically cannot wait inclusion into the next agenda meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the report as urgent business? Councillor Payne, seconded Councillor Cronin. Is there any opposition? Not. I put the motion, those in favour. Motion is carried 9-0 to accept that item. Is there a Mover for the officer recommendation for 17.1. Move Councillor Cox, seconded Councillor Carter. Is there any opposition? None. I put the motion. Those in favour? It's carried 9-0. Absolute majority achieved. Councillors, we now have 2 reports of a confidential nature in accordance with section 523(2)A of the Local Government Act. These reports have been provided to councillors and the CEO only. In order to maintain confidentiality of these items, I will seek a decision to close the meeting to members of the public and all staff. Do I have a mover to close the meeting to the public? Move Councillor Cronin, second Councillor Richards. Is there any opposition? It's not. I put the motion. Those in favour? Is carried 9-0. Motion. Thank you. We've reopened the business. The confidential item at 18.1 Council supported the committee recommendation in regard to general computer controls audit, status of finding for 2022. And at 18.2, the Council, with respect to the acquisition of part lot 9020 Caves Road, Dunsborough, resolved as per confidential attachment 6. Both of those were carried unanimously 9-0. With that, and there being no further business of council, I did wish to make one announcement prior to the closure of the business, and I did get too self-obsessed during the earlier part of the meeting where we had presiding members' announcements. But an announcement that I think is very good news for the district is that the council has sealed the contract for the purchase of land at Sues Road from the Tronox Corporation Mining Company. This is over 1,000 acres of land, which will be a significant strategic purchase and will be of huge benefit to the community of the city of Busselton going forward. And we will release a media release with details of that. But I would like to publicly thank the Tronox Corporation for their community spiritedness in these negotiations. This is, I think, the second biggest land holding within the city of Busselton and will serve a community purpose for many years to come. So I did wish to announce that as part of presiding members' announcements, but it's all about me. With that, I declare this, my 272nd meeting of council, closed. Next meeting will be on the 15th of November and I'll be in a caravan on Hamlin Bay. So, thank you all. Let me